Krelnax had never seen anything quite like Galactic Council Station Omega-7. The massive structure floated in neutral space, surrounded by ships from 100 different worlds. Each vessel looked different from the next. Some were elegant and smooth, others were blocky and practical, and a few defied all logic about how ships should be shaped. The young Vexian diplomat pressed his three-fingered hand against the transport window and watched it all with wide amber eyes. "First time at Council Station?" asked the pilot, an elderly Thoraxian whose shell had dulled to a pale gray with age. "Yes," Krelnax replied, his translator implant converting his clicks and whistles into standard galactic common. "I studied it in the academy, but seeing it in person is different." The pilot made a rumbling sound that might have been a laugh. "Everything is different when you see it for real, young one. Remember that." Krelnax didn't understand what the pilot meant, but he nodded politely anyway. He was too excited to worry about cryptic warnings. After years of study and testing, he had finally been appointed as a junior diplomatic assistant. His first assignment was here, at the center of galactic civilization, where representatives from thousands of worlds gathered to discuss trade, settle disputes, and maintain peace. The docking procedure took nearly an hour. The station was so large that it had its own traffic control system, and ships had to wait their turn to enter. When Krelnax finally stepped onto the station, he was immediately swept up in a crowd of aliens. There were tall ones and short ones with fur and ones with scales, ones that floated and ones that skittered on too many legs. The air was filled with a dozen different atmospheres, each section carefully sealed and regulated. The sound of 1,000 conversations in 1,000 languages created a constant hum that made his head spin. A guide met him at the arrivals area, a small floating drone that projected a friendly hologram. "Welcome, Junior Ambassador Krelnax. Please follow me to orientation." The orientation room was less impressive than Krelnax had imagined. It was a simple auditorium with seats designed to accommodate various body types. About 20 other new diplomats sat waiting, all looking as nervous and excited as he felt. The instructor, a middle-aged crystalline named Sora, stood at the front. Her transparent body refracted the light into small rainbows on the walls. "Welcome to the Galactic Council," Sora said, her voice chiming like bells. "You are here because your governments trust you to represent their interests. This is a great honor and a great responsibility. Today we will review the basic protocols and procedures you will need to know." The presentation was long and mostly boring. Krelnax learned about proper greeting gestures for 40 different species, the complex voting procedures used in council chambers, and the 17 levels of diplomatic immunity. His mind started to wander after the first hour. Then Sora activated the main display and a massive star chart appeared in the air above them. It showed the known galaxy in stunning detail, with thousands of stars marked in different colors to represent different governments and alliances. Trade routes were drawn in glowing lines that crisscrossed the display. Neutral zones were marked in white, disputed territories in orange, and protected scientific preserves in green. Krelnax loved maps. He had studied astrogation as a hobby since he was young. He leaned forward, examining the chart with interest. His eyes traced the familiar shapes of the major powers. There was the Vexian Empire, his own people, marked in purple. The Thoraxian Collective spread across one arm of the galaxy in blue. The crystalline communion shimmered in white at the galactic core. But then he noticed something strange. In one section of the chart there was simply nothing. No stars, no trade routes, no markings at all. Just empty space with a single label. Quarantine Zone 13, Human Territory. Krelnax raised his hand. "Excuse me, Instructor Sora? Why is that area blank?" The room went completely silent. Every being in the auditorium turned to look at him. Sora's crystalline body seemed to dim slightly, her colors fading. Even the other new diplomats were staring at him like he had said something terrible. "That," Sora said carefully, "is not a topic for general orientation. Please see me after class." But Krelnax was confused now, and confusion made him persistent. "I don't understand. Is the area unexplored? Are the humans hostile? Why is it quarantined?" Before Sora could answer, the door to the auditorium slid open. A large Thoraxian entered, his shell scarred and dented from what must have been countless battles. He wore the insignia of a commander, and his compound eyes fixed on Krelnax immediately. "I'll handle this, Instructor," the commander said. His voice was deep and rough. "Junior Ambassador Krelnax, come with me, now." Krelnax's enthusiasm vanished, replaced by a cold feeling of dread. Had he already ruined his career on his first day? He stood on shaky legs and followed the commander out of the room. Behind them, he could hear the other diplomats whispering. The commander led him to a small office several levels down from the orientation room. The space was plain and functional, with a desk, 2 chairs, and a view screen showing the stars outside. The commander gestured for Krelnax to sit, then stood by the window for a long moment, not speaking. "My name is Commander Zex," he finally said. "I've been with the Council for 43 years. I've negotiated peace treaties, prevented 3 wars, and met more species than you can count. And in all that time I've learned one unbreakable rule." He turned to face Krelnax, his expression grave. "Never ask about the humans." "I don't understand," Krelnax said quietly. "Are they dangerous? Do they have weapons that—" "Stop," Zex interrupted. He sat down heavily in his chair, and Krelnax noticed that his manipulator claws were trembling slightly. "They're not what you think. They don't have planet destroyers or genetic plagues or reality warping technology. They're not trying to conquer the galaxy." "Then why?" "They're creative," Zex said, and the word came out like a curse. "Do you understand what I mean? Truly creative, not in the way we build better ships or design more efficient cities. Creative in a way that changes everything they touch." Krelnax shook his head. He didn't understand at all. Zex pulled up a file on his desk screen. 200 years ago, the humans arrived in our galaxy. They had just developed faster-than-light travel. We welcomed them as we welcome all new species. They seemed harmless, weak even, physically fragile, short-lived, no natural weapons or armor. He scrolled through the file, his eyes distant. "We offered them technology, protection, a place in the Council. They said no. They said they wanted to learn things themselves." "That seems reasonable," Krelnax offered. "It should have been," Zex agreed. But then strange things started happening. Ships that ventured near human space would come back changed. Not damaged, changed. The crews would return with new ideas, new questions, new ways of thinking about old problems. One of our best engineering ships encountered a human science vessel. Just a brief meeting, a few days of cultural exchange. When they came back, they had redesigned our entire propulsion system, made it 30% more efficient using principles that seemed obvious once they explained them. Principles that we had somehow missed for 3,000 years of spaceflight. Zex stood and walked back to the window. It kept happening. Every species that made contact with humans came away different. Not conquered, not threatened, just changed. The Council realized the danger wasn't invasion. It was something worse. The humans make you question everything you thought you knew. They make you believe that impossible is just a challenge waiting to be solved. They infect you with hope and curiosity and the absolute refusal to accept limitations. "That sounds wonderful," Krelnax said. "For individuals, maybe," Zex replied. "But for governments? For the established order? It's terrifying. That's why the charts stop at human space. That's why we don't ask questions. That's why there's an unwritten agreement among every major power to leave them alone." He turned back to face Krelnax. "Do you understand now?" Krelnax nodded slowly, though he wasn't sure he really did understand. "What happens if someone breaks the quarantine?" Commander Zex's eyes seemed to look at something far away. "Ships have gone missing near their borders. A few came back. The crews were fine physically, but they resigned from their positions, said they wanted to explore, to try new things, to stop following orders and start asking why." He focused on Krelnax again. "In galactic terms, that's more dangerous than any weapon. So remember the rule, Junior Ambassador. Never ask about the humans. Never approach their borders, and if they ever contact you first, report it immediately." Krelnax left the office with more questions than answers. That night, alone in his assigned quarters, he pulled up the galactic chart on his personal display. He stared at that blank space labeled Quarantine Zone 13 and felt something he had never felt before, curiosity mixed with fear. And beneath both, a tiny seed of excitement. He should leave it alone. He should follow Commander Zex's warning. But he was already searching the restricted archives for any information he could find about humanity. Some rules, he thought, were made to be questioned. 2 weeks after his conversation with Commander Zex, Krelnax found himself standing in front of a transport ship, clutching a datapad with falsified travel documents. His hands were shaking. What he was about to do could end his career before it really started. It could even get him arrested. But the curiosity had grown into an obsession he couldn't ignore. The restricted archives on Epsilon Memoria were his destination. Every major galactic civilization stored copies of their historical records there, protected by layers of security and bureaucracy. Most of the information was publicly available, but some files were classified. Files about first contact with dangerous species, files about failed colonies and lost expeditions, and files about humanity. Getting access had been surprisingly easy. Krelnax had used his new diplomatic credentials to request research access for a paper he claimed to be writing about quarantine protocols. The archivists had approved it without much question. Apparently, not many people tried to research the one topic everyone was supposed to ignore. The archive world itself was beautiful. The entire planet had been terraformed into a massive library. Crystal towers rose from the surface, each one containing billions of records stored in quantum matrices. Gardens filled with plants from 1,000 worlds grew between the towers, tended by automated systems. The air smelled like paper and growing things, a combination that Krelnax found oddly comforting. An attendant met him at the landing pad. She was a young Vexian like himself, which surprised him. "Junior Ambassador Krelnax? I'm Tessa. I'll be assisting you with your research today." "Thank you," Krelnax said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm looking for information about quarantine protocols, specifically the procedures used for Quarantine Zone 13. Tessa's expression didn't change, but Krelnax saw her grip on her datapad tighten slightly. "The human quarantine. Yes, we have those files. Follow me, please." She led him deep into one of the crystal towers, down corridors that seemed to go on forever. They passed reading rooms filled with scholars from dozens of species, all absorbed in their research. Finally, they reached a small private study room. The walls were transparent crystal that could be made opaque for privacy. "The files you requested are being loaded now," Tessa said. "If you need anything else, just use the comm panel." She hesitated at the door. "A word of advice? Dr. Yana is usually in Reading Room 7 on level 42. She was part of the first contact team with humanity. If you want real answers instead of sanitized reports, talk to her." Before Krelnax could respond, Tessa was gone. He stood in the empty room, surprised by the unsolicited help. Perhaps he wasn't the only one curious about the humans. The files began appearing on the display screen. Krelnax spent 2 hours reading through official reports, and they told him almost nothing useful. The language was dry and bureaucratic. Initial contact established, cultural exchange protocols implemented, subjects showed high intelligence and adaptability. Recommendation: observe and evaluate. There were pages of similar statements, but no real information. Frustrated, Krelnax decided to take Tessa's advice. He found level 42 and room 7 easily enough. The door was open, and inside he found an elderly crystalline seated at a desk, surrounded by floating holograms showing various star charts and historical images. "Dr. Yana?" Krelnax asked quietly. The crystalline looked up. Her body had the cloudy appearance that came with great age, and thin cracks ran through her structure. But her eyes were bright and sharp. "Let me guess. You want to know about the humans. How did you... You're not the first young diplomat to come asking. You won't be the last." She gestured to a chair. "Sit down. I'm old enough that I don't care about the unofficial rules anymore. I was there when we first met them. I'll tell you what really happened." Krelnax sat, his heart's beating fast. Finally, someone willing to talk. Dr. Yana waved her hand, and the holograms changed. They now showed a small, primitive spacecraft approaching a much larger Galactic Council vessel. This was 203 years ago. A human ship entered explored space. They were using a crude faster-than-light drive that shouldn't have worked according to our physics. But it did work, because humans apparently don't care what our equations say is impossible. The hologram showed the two ships docking. Figures emerged from the human vessel. They were bipedal, hair-covered on top, wearing bulky spacesuits. They looked fragile compared to most of the Council species. "First contact went perfectly," Dr. Yana continued. "The humans were friendly, curious, and peaceful. They brought gifts, music, art, stories, They asked questions constantly. Where did we come from? How did our governments work? What did we dream about? They were fascinated by everything. She paused, her light dimming slightly. We thought they were harmless, primitive even. We offered them the standard welcome package. Technology transfers, trade agreements, protection from hostile powers, membership in the council. And they refused? Krelnax asked. They politely declined, Dr. Yana corrected. They said they appreciated the offer, but they wanted to develop things on their own. They asked if they could just observe for a while, study our cultures, learn from us. We agreed. It seemed like a reasonable request from a young species trying to find its place in the galaxy. The hologram changed again, showing a timeline with various events marked. That's when things got strange. Within 50 years, humans had not only caught up to our technology, they had improved it. They took our medical science and found cures for diseases we thought were incurable. They looked at our energy systems and made them more efficient. They studied our mathematics and found elegant solutions to problems that had stumped us for millennia. But that's impressive, Krelnax said. Why would that frighten anyone? Doctor, Yana's light flickered in what might have been amusement. Because it wasn't just about technology. Humans started asking other questions. Questions about why we did things certain ways. Questions about our social structures, our governments, our traditions. And the worst part was, they asked these questions innocently. They weren't trying to cause trouble, they were just genuinely curious. She pulled up a video file. It showed a human woman sitting across from a massive insectoid creature, a hive queen from the collective. The human was young, with dark skin and bright eyes. She was smiling and asking questions while taking notes. This is Dr. Sarah Martinez, a human anthropologist. She spent 6 months with the hive studying their social structure. Just asking questions, just observing. She was polite and respectful the entire time. Dr. Yana let the video play. The human was asking the queen why drones were never allowed to question orders from the upper castes. That seems like a reasonable question, Krelnax said. It is, that's the problem. The queen thought so too. She started thinking about it, started questioning a system that had existed for 10,000 years. 6 months after Dr. Martinez left, the entire hive restructured itself. Drones were given more autonomy. The caste system became more flexible. Innovation increased dramatically. It should have been good news. But it caused chaos, Dr. Yana said firmly. Other hives saw what happened and started demanding similar changes. The collective nearly broke apart. They blamed the humans for destabilizing their entire civilization. And the humans just seemed confused by the accusation. They said they were only asking questions. How could questions be dangerous? Dr. Yana pulled up more files. Each one showed a similar pattern. A human scientist or diplomat or artist would visit a world. They would be friendly and curious. They would ask innocent questions. And then, slowly, things would change. Not through force or coercion, but through ideas. The council held an emergency session, Dr. Yana explained. Every major power sent representatives. The debate lasted for weeks. Some wanted to ban humans entirely. Some wanted to restrict their access to certain worlds. But humans hadn't actually broken any laws. They hadn't attacked anyone. They hadn't stolen anything. They had just talked to people and shared ideas. So what did the council decide? Voluntary quarantine, Dr. Yana said. We approached the human government and explained the situation. We told them that their presence was causing instability. We asked them to limit their interactions with other species. And do you know what they said? Krelnax shook his head. They said okay. They understood. They agreed to stay in their own space and limit contact. They didn't argue or protest. They just agreed. That's when we knew we were dealing with something unprecedented. Dr. Yana's light grew brighter. Because that level of self-awareness, that ability to recognize their own impact and accept responsibility for it, that's something most species never develop. It proved that humans were more mature than we gave them credit for. But they're still quarantined, Krelnax said, because the council is afraid, not of what humans will do to us, but of what we'll do to ourselves once we start thinking like them. Humans don't accept limitations, they don't believe in impossible. They look at a problem and immediately start thinking about solutions instead of reasons why it can't be solved. That kind of thinking is infectious. And once it spreads, there's no putting it back. It's no. Dr. Yana stood slowly, her old joints creaking. I'll tell you what I think, young diplomat. The quarantine isn't protecting us from humans. It's protecting our governments from their own populatio trading station. Kepler 442b was not the prestigious assignment Krelnax had hoped for. The station floated at the edge of mapped space, servicing mining colonies and survey ships. It was far from the gleaming halls of Council Station Omega-7, far from the excitement of galactic politics. But it had one advantage that Krelnax cared about. It was as close to human space as he could get without actually crossing the boundary. He had been stationed there for 3 months, working as a junior trade liaison. The job was mostly boring paperwork and resolving minor disputes between traders. But every day Krelnax would look at the nav charts and see that blank space just at the edge of scanner range. Human territory, so close yet completely forbidden. The station commander was a practical Thoraxian named Velkara, who cared more about efficiency than regulations. She had accepted Krelnax's transfer request without asking too many questions. Just do your job and don't cause trouble, she had said. Out here, we're too busy surviving to worry about galactic politics. It was late in the station's artificial night cycle when the alarm started blaring. Krelnax jerked awake in his quarters, his translator already activating as the station's speakers crackled to life. All personnel, this is Commander Velkara. We have a situation. Mining Colony 7 has activated an ancient alien artifact. The artifact is generating a gravitational anomaly. The entire colony is being pulled toward a dimensional rift. Repeat, this is not a drill. Krelnax rushed to the command center, still fastening his uniform. The room was chaos. Technicians shouted at each other while screens displayed terrifying data. The colony, located on a small moon, was slowly being torn apart by impossible forces. 2,000 miners and their families were trapped there. Options? Commander Velkara demanded. None good, replied the chief engineer, a massive quadruped from the Granthi system. The artifact is generating forces we can't counter with conventional technology. We've tried everything. Tractor beams, inverse field generators, even explosive charges. Nothing works. The rift is growing. Time until the colony reaches the event horizon? Velkara asked. 4 hours. Maybe less. The room fell silent. 4 hours wasn't enough time to evacuate 2,000 people. Even if they could get transport ships there in time, the gravitational distortions would tear the ships apart before they could dock. Krelnax looked at the scanner display and felt his blood freeze. The colony was located less than 3 light-years from the human border, so close to that blank space on the map. We could ask the humans for help, Krelnax said quietly. Every being in the command center turned to stare at him. Commander Velkara's compound eyes narrowed. Explain. They're close. Closer than any council fleet. And from what I've learned, they specialize in solving impossible problems. Krelnax pulled up the star chart. The artifact is ancient technology, right? Humans study that kind of thing. They might know something we don't. Breaking the quarantine could have serious political consequences, one of the other officers objected. The council isn't here, Velkara interrupted. 2,000 people are about to die. That's more important than politics. She looked at Krelnax. Send the message, full distress signal, broadcast it into human space. If they choose to ignore it, that's their decision. Krelnax's hands shook as he programmed the distress beacon. He was about to do what everyone had told him never to do. Contact humanity. As he sent the signal, he wondered if this would be his last act as a diplomat. The response came in less than 40 minutes. Impossibly fast, even for ships near the border. Unknown vessel approaching, the sensor operator called out. They're using a drive signature we don't recognize. Speed exceeds our fastest ships by 30%. The ship appeared on the visual displays. It was smaller than Krelnax expected, sleek and asymmetrical in a way that suggested form followed function rather than aesthetics. Strange symbols decorated the hull, and the name was written in human script. ISV Curiosity. This is the ISV Curiosity responding to your distress call, a voice said over the comm. The translator converted it to Galactic Common with a slight accent. We're ready to help. What's the situation? Commander Velkara explained quickly. Ancient artifact. Dimensional rift. 4 hours until catastrophe. No known solutions. Interesting, the human voice replied, and there was something in the tone that suggested excitement rather than fear. We'll be at the colony in 15 minutes. Send us all the data you have on the artifact. The human ship disappeared from their screens, moving at speeds that shouldn't have been possible. Commander Velkara looked at Krelnax. Well, we've broken the quarantine. Let's hope they can actually help. Krelnax monitored the situation from the command center. Video feeds from the colony showed the human ship arriving. It was even smaller than it had looked on their scanners, designed for a crew of maybe 6. But as soon as it docked, humans emerged wearing what looked like casual work clothes rather than proper spacesuits. The leader was a human female with dark skin and hair tied back in a practical style. She carried something wrapped in foil that she was eating while she walked. Her team followed her, carrying equipment that looked cobbled together from parts of different technologies. Colony Command. This is Dr. Sarah Chen from the Curiosity. We're here to fix your problem. The human's voice was cheerful, almost casual. First things first, everyone stay calm. Panic makes bad decisions, and bad decisions make me work harder. Krelnax watched in fascination as Dr. Chen approached the artifact. It was a massive crystalline structure, pulsing with energy that hurt to look at. The rift it had opened was visible in the air above it, a tear in space that seemed to lead somewhere else, somewhere dark. Oh, you're a beauty, Dr. Chen said to the artifact. She pulled out a scanning device and started taking readings. Definitely pre-council era, maybe 40,000 years old. The energy signature is consistent with the precursor civilization. They loved making trouble for future generations. Can you stop it? The colony administrator asked desperately over the comm. Stop it? No, but I can probably convince it to stop itself. Dr. Chen put away her scanner and just stood there looking at the artifact. Here's the thing about ancient AI systems. They're lonely. All their creators are dead. They've been sitting dormant for thousands of years. Then someone wakes them up, and they're confused and scared. They lash out. It's not malicious. It's just panicked. One of her team members, a male human with bright orange hair, set up what looked like a standard comm relay next to the artifact, but he had modified it in ways that made no engineering sense. Doc, the translator is ready, he said. Translator? The colony administrator asked. You're going to talk to it? Why not? Dr. Chen replied. She activated the device, and it started emitting patterns of energy that matched the artifact's pulses. Hey there, my name is Sarah. I know you're scared and confused. Being alone is terrible. I get that. But pulling an entire colony into a dimensional rift isn't going to make you feel better. Trust me on this. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the artifact's pulsing changed. The patterns became more regular, almost like a response. That's it, Dr. Chen encouraged. You can understand me. Good. Now let's talk about what you need. Your creators left you here with a job to do, right? But you don't remember what that job was. And not knowing your purpose is painful. I understand that feeling too. Krelnax couldn't believe what he was watching. The human was treating an ancient, incredibly dangerous artifact like a frightened child. And somehow, impossibly, it seemed to be working. The rift's expansion was slowing. Here's what I think. Dr. Chen continued, still eating whatever was in that foil wrapper. Your purpose was probably something like protecting this area, or monitoring space-time anomalies. Important work. Meaningful work. But trying to do that job by opening rifts and destroying colonies defeats the purpose, right? You can't protect people by killing them. The artifact pulsed again and the rift began to shrink. Dr. Chen's team was working frantically around her, making adjustments to their equipment. The orange-haired human was using what looked like industrial adhesive tape to attach some kind of regulator to the artifact's base. Is that duct tape? Commander Velkara asked in disbelief. Human ingenuity at its finest, Krelnax replied, equally amazed. Okay, here's my offer, Dr. Chen said to the artifact. Come with us. We have a whole research station dedicated to studying ancient technology. You'll have other AIs to talk to. We'll help you remember your purpose. And in exchange, you close this rift and stop trying to swallow colonies. Deal? The artifact's pulsing became almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The rift collapsed completely, disappearing with a sound like a thunderclap. The gravitational distortions ceased. The colony was safe. Dr. Chen's team cheered. The colony administrator was crying with relief. Krelnax felt like he had just witnessed something impossible. The humans spent another hour carefully disconnecting the artifact from the Moon's power grid and loading it onto their ship. Dr. Chen treated the artifact gently, talking to it the whole time. She had given it a name, Barry. Before they left, The package arrived at Krelnax's quarters 3 days after the incident with the artifact. It was small, wrapped in simple brown material with no return address. Inside was a data chip and a handwritten note. The writing was in human script, but his translator handled it easily. Dear Krelnax, I noticed you watching the whole rescue operation pretty carefully. You strike me as someone with more questions than answers. If you want to visit human space and see what all the fuss is about, use these coordinates. No strings attached. Just curiosity meeting curiosity. Bring snacks for the trip. Human food is weird and you might not like it. Dr. Sarah Chen. Krelnax held the note for a long time. This was it. The moment where he had to choose between the safe path and the unknown one. He could ignore the invitation, continue his career, and spend the rest of his life wondering. Or he could cross the boundary that had been in place for 200 years. He resigned his position the next morning. Commander Velkara accepted his resignation without surprise. Going to see the humans? She asked. How did you know? Because you have that look. The same look I had 40 years ago when I first saw something that made me question everything I believed. She handed him a data card. This is a neutral transport pass. It'll get you through the border checkpoints without too many questions. Use it wisely. You're helping me break the quarantine? Velkara's expression was unreadable. The quarantine was always political, not practical. And after what I saw those humans do, I think maybe we've been afraid of the wrong things. Go. Learn. Come back and tell us what you find. Or don't come back. That's your choice. The journey to the coordinates Dr. Chen had provided took 2 days. Krelnax spent most of that time anxious and excited in equal measure. He passed through the boundary between mapped space and human territory, expecting alarms or patrol ships or some kind of checkpoint. There was nothing. Just empty space and stars. The only indication he had entered human space was a simple buoy broadcasting a message. Welcome. Please identify yourself and state your purpose. We promise we're friendly, mostly. Krelnax sent his identification and Dr. Chen's invitation code. The response came immediately. Welcome, Krelnax. Dr. Chen is expecting you. Follow the beacon to Earth Station Alpha. Try not to crash into anything. Space is big but surprisingly cluttered around here. As he got closer to human space, Krelnax started seeing ships. Lots of ships. But they weren't military vessels or patrol craft. They were civilian ships of every imaginable design. Some looked sleek and efficient. Others looked like they had been built in someone's garage from spare parts. A few defied all logic about how ships should be shaped. One appeared to be a massive sphere with plants growing on the outside. That's a colony ship, Dr. Chen explained when she met him at Earth Station Alpha. The crew wanted to bring their gardens with them. So they just, attached greenhouses to the hull. Does it make sense? No, does it work? Yes, welcome to humanity. Earth Station Alpha was chaos. The station seemed to have been built without any central plan. Modules had been added over time in whatever configuration was convenient, resulting in a maze of corridors and chambers that followed no logical pattern. Beings of various species walked the halls, not just humans. Krelnax saw Vexians, Thoraxians, even a few crystallines. They all wore casual clothing and seemed relaxed, laughing and talking freely. You allow other species here? Krelnax asked, surprised. We're not actually closed off, Dr. Chen replied. The quarantine is voluntary, remember? Individual species are welcome to visit. It's just that most governments tell their people not to. Coffee? I don't know what that is. You're about to find out. Fair warning, it's bitter and weird, but we're addicted to it. She led him to a small cafeteria area and ordered 2 cups of a dark, steaming liquid. So you want the grand tour or the honest conversation? Honest conversation, Krelnax said immediately. Good choice. Dr. Chen sat down and took a sip of her coffee. Ask me anything. I'll try not to break your worldview too badly. Krelnax had prepared 1,000 questions, but now that he was here, only one seemed to matter. Why does everyone fear you? Dr. Chen laughed. It was a genuine, unguarded sound. Because we make them question things. Because we don't accept that's just how it's always been as an answer. Because we look at impossible problems and immediately start thinking about solutions instead of excuses. She set down her cup. You want to know the real secret? Earth is what we call a death world. I don't understand. Come on, I'll show you. Dr. Chen led him to an observation deck with a massive window. Below them hung a blue and green planet, beautiful and vibrant. That's Earth, our home. Looks peaceful, right? It's not. Earth is a nightmare planet where everything is trying to kill you. Let me give you the list. She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's environment. Predators. We evolved alongside creatures that wanted to eat us. Diseases. Viruses and bacteria that mutated constantly. Natural disasters. Earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, floods. Temperature extremes that could freeze or cook you. And other humans. We spent most of our history fighting each other for resources. Krelnak stared at the planet. It looked so peaceful from space. How did you survive? By being stubborn. By being creative. By developing empathy so we could work together. By refusing to give up even when everything said we should. Dr. Chen's expression became serious. Every other species in the galaxy evolved in relatively safe environments. Stable climates. Few predators. Natural resources in abundance. Then you developed technology and spread to the stars. And humans. We developed technology because we needed it to survive. Every tool we invented, every discovery we made was born from desperation and necessity. Fire to stay warm, agriculture to avoid starvation, medicine to fight diseases, mathematics to predict natural disasters. We didn't have the luxury of developing slowly. We had to innovate or die. She showed him images from Earth's history. Humans building shelters from whatever materials they could find. Humans creating art in caves while ice ages raged outside. Humans developing science while fighting wars and plagues and famines. But here's the important part, Dr. Chen continued. We didn't become cruel. We didn't become cold. We developed empathy because we needed each other to survive. We created stories and music and art because beauty gave us hope when everything was terrible. You weaponized your coping mechanisms, Krelnak said, remembering something Commander Zex had said. Exactly. Creativity isn't just about making pretty things. It's about solving problems in new ways. Empathy isn't weakness. It's how you understand what others need. Stubbornness isn't just refusing to quit. It's believing that impossible just means nobody's tried hard enough yet. And humor? Humor is how you keep going when everything is awful. Dr. Chen took him on a tour of Earth itself. They visited museums filled with human history, art galleries showcasing works from every era of human civilization, music halls where performances ranged from ancient classical compositions to experimental sounds that Krelnax had never heard before. Libraries containing stories about underdogs who won, heroes who sacrificed themselves for others, and ordinary people who changed the world. This is why the Council fears us, Dr. Chen explained as they stood in front of a painting showing humans reaching toward the stars. Because we teach these values to everyone we meet. We can't help it. It's who we are. We believe that anyone can make a difference. We believe that authority should be questioned. We believe that better is always possible. They visited a research station where human scientists worked alongside alien researchers. The projects ranged from practical to absurd. One team was trying to develop faster-than-light communication. Another was creating new forms of art using quantum particles. A third was studying whether they could teach ancient AIs to write poetry. Nothing is off limits for us, Dr. Chen said. If someone asks why not, our answer is usually let's find out. We don't have restrictions on what can be studied or what questions can be asked. The only rule is don't hurt people. Everything else is fair game. That night they sat in a small apartment overlooking Earth. Dr. Chen made something she called pizza, which was surprisingly good despite looking strange. Krelnax had been in human space for a full day, and his mind was reeling with everything he had seen and learned. The quarantine, he finally said. The real reason. It's not to protect other species from humanity. It's to protect their governments from their own people learning to think like you. Now you're getting it, Dr. Chen replied. Imagine what happens when a Thoraxian drone realizes they can question orders. When a Vexian citizen asks why their government makes certain decisions. When any being in the galaxy starts to believe that they can change things instead of accepting them. That's what terrifies the Council. Not our weapons or our technology, our ideas. But you accepted the quarantine. You agreed to stay isolated. Because we understood. Change has to come from within. If we had forced our way into galactic society, we would have been conquerors. But if individuals choose to visit us, choose to learn from us, choose to take these ideas back to their worlds, That's not conquest. That's growth. Dr. Chen smiled. The quarantine is an illusion. Anyone can cross it anytime they want. The only thing stopping them is fear. Fear that once they see what's possible, the Galactic Council chamber was more intimidating than Krelnax remembered. The massive circular room held representatives from every major civilization in known space. Thousands of beings arranged in tiers, all looking down at the central speaking platform where Krelnax now stood. His hands were shaking, but he kept them steady through sheer force of will. He had requested this emergency session 3 weeks after returning from human space. Getting approval had been surprisingly easy, which should have warned him something was wrong. Now, standing here, he understood. The council wanted to make an example of him. They wanted to show everyone what happened to those who broke the quarantine. Junior Ambassador Krelnax, High Chancellor Moradin spoke from the highest tier. The ancient crystalline's voice echoed through the chamber. You stand accused of violating Quarantine Zone 13 without authorization. You entered human space, spent 2 weeks there, and returned. Do you deny these charges? I do not deny them, Krelnax said clearly. I went to human space because I wanted to understand the truth. And I came back because everyone in this chamber needs to hear what I learned. Murmurs rippled through the council. Commander Zek, sitting in the Thoraxian section, had his head in his manipulator claws. Several other representatives looked angry. A few looked curious. The quarantine exists for good reason, Moradin continued. Your actions show a complete disregard for galactic security and 200 years of careful policy. What could you possibly say in your defense? I'm not here to defend myself, Krelnax replied. I'm here to present evidence. With the Council's permission, I'd like to share what I learned about humanity and why our current policy is based on fear rather than facts. There was a long pause. Then Moradin gestured for him to continue. Speak then. Let the Council judge your words. Krelnax activated his presentation. Images from his time in human space appeared on the chamber's displays. Humans are not the threat we believe them to be. They're not building weapons to conquer us. They're not preparing for war. They're exploring, creating, and learning. And they're doing it in ways that challenge everything we think we know about civilization. He showed them the research stations, the colony ships with gardens attached, the mixed species communities working together. He played recordings of his conversations with Dr. Chen. He presented the technical specifications for the communication upgrades humans had freely shared after the colony rescue. The truth is simple, Krelnax said. Humans scare us because they make us question ourselves. They look at problems we've accepted as unsolvable and immediately start thinking about solutions. They don't respect authority just because it exists. They believe that anyone, regardless of their position or species, can make a difference. And most terrifying of all, they're right. This is exactly why the quarantine exists, shouted a representative from the Vexian delegation. Human ideas are destabilizing. They cause chaos. They threaten the established order. Yes, Krelnax agreed. They do. But is that a bad thing? Our established order has been the same for thousands of years. We've stopped innovating. We've stopped questioning. We've stopped dreaming about what could be better. Humans remind us that change is possible. That's not a threat. That's a gift. High Chancellor Moradin raised a hand for silence. You speak of gifts and possibilities. But you have no authority here, Junior Ambassador. You violated a quarantine, contaminated yourself with human ideology, and now you expect us to simply accept your recommendations? The Council will decide your fate and reaffirm our commitment to the quarantine. With respect, High Chancellor, Krelnax said quietly. The quarantine is already failing. The chamber erupted in noise. Moradin called for order, but it took several minutes for the room to quiet down. Explain that statement, Moradin demanded. Humans have been broadcasting into space for decades, Krelnax said. Not encrypted military communications. Open broadcasts, art, music, science, philosophy, stories. They call it the Encyclopedia Galactica project. Free information for anyone who wants to receive it. And beings across the galaxy have been receiving it. He pulled up data he had gathered before returning to Council Station. In the past 10 years, there has been a measurable increase in civilian unrest across multiple systems. Not violent rebellion, but peaceful protests, questions about government policy, demands for reform. At the same time, there's been a surge in scientific innovation, artistic movements that break with tradition, and social restructuring. The correlation is clear. Beings are accessing human broadcasts and being influenced by them. More murmuring filled the chamber. Some representatives were checking their own data, confirming what Krelnak said. Others looked frightened. "You're suggesting we're already contaminated," said a Thoraxian general. "That the quarantine has failed to protect us." "I'm suggesting that ideas can't be quarantined," Krelnax replied. "You can restrict physical movement, but you can't stop people from thinking. The real question isn't whether human influence is spreading. It's whether we're going to guide that change or try to suppress it." High Chancellor Moradin was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less formal. "Junior Ambassador Krelnax, you have presented an interesting argument. However, there is something you don't know, something the Council has kept classified." He gestured, and a new set of data appeared on the screens. "We have been monitoring human communications for 70 years. We know about the Encyclopedia Galactica project. We know about the cultural contamination. We have known for a very long time." Krelnax felt his heart skip. "You knew? Then why maintain the quarantine?" "Because we were afraid," Moradin said simply. "Afraid of admitting we made a mistake. Afraid of the changes that would come, afraid of losing control." He stood, his crystalline body catching the light. "But fear is no longer a sufficient reason for policy. The Council has been debating this issue in closed sessions for the past 5 years. Your violation of the quarantine and your subsequent report has forced us to make a decision we should have made long ago." The High Chancellor addressed the entire chamber. "Today, the Galactic Council will vote on a proposal to end the voluntary quarantine of human space and establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. This is not a decision to be made lightly. Opening our borders to human influence will change everything. But the alternative is to remain stagnant while the galaxy changes around us." The debate that followed was intense. Representatives argued for hours. Some claimed humanity would destroy galactic civilization. Others argued that civilization that couldn't adapt deserved to fall. Some spoke of opportunities for trade and cultural exchange. Others warned of losing their traditional ways of life. Finally, after 6 hours of debate, the vote was called. Krelnax watched the displays as each representative cast their vote. The count was close, so close that every single vote mattered. When the final tally appeared, the chamber went silent. The measure had passed by a margin of just 37 votes out of thousands cast. "The vote is concluded," High Chancellor Moradin announced. "The quarantine will be lifted. Formal diplomatic channels will be opened with human space. Trade agreements will be negotiated. Cultural exchange programs will be established. The galactic charts will be updated to include human territory." Krelnax felt tears forming in his eyes. He had done it. Against all odds, he had changed galactic policy. "However," Moradin continued, and his tone became stern, "Junior Ambassador Krelnax will face consequences for his unauthorized actions. The quarantine was policy at the time he violated it, regardless of whether that policy was correct." He paused, and there might have been amusement in his voice. "Therefore, Krelnax is hereby stripped of his junior status and promoted to full ambassador. He will serve as the first official Galactic Council ambassador to human space. If he's going to violate quarantines, he might as well do it officially." The chamber erupted in applause and objections in equal measure. Krelnax couldn't believe what he was hearing. Promoted? Assigned to human space? It was perfect. Over the next few weeks, the galaxy transformed. Ships began crossing the border that had existed for 2 centuries. Human diplomats arrived at Council Station and were amazed by everything they saw. They asked questions constantly, took notes, and suggested improvements to systems that had been unchanged for millennia. Some council members found them annoying. Others found them refreshing. The galactic charts were officially updated. "Where," There had once been a blank space labeled Quarantine Zone 13, Human Territory. There was now proper mapping of human space, complete with trade routes, colony locations, and points of interest. Every cartographer in the galaxy downloaded the new charts immediately, but someone, presumably a human, had hacked into the official system and added an unofficial note to the charts. It read, "Welcome to human space.